all of the sacrifices, all of the failures, all the losses were all worth it. I knew I always wanted a family and I always wanted to be present with my family, and I'm able to do that for the 20-ish years of sacrificing that I did.
Welcome back to the Cashflow Podcast, the podcast where we talk about turning properties into profits. I'm your host, Jayson Yoss, and before we get to my special guest, I want to take a minute to thank our sponsors. First, Daniel's Plumbing, servicing all of San Diego, Orange County, and the Inland Empire, as well as Rainforest Plumbing, Heating, and Air, servicing all of Maricopa County and the Phoenix Valley. Without their support, we couldn't do it. Thanks, guys. Now my guest, broker and owner, Finest City Homes and Loans, Eric Vaca.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Eric, man, I'm so excited to have you on. Getting to speak with you about your upbringing in the real estate industry, very nostalgic because we've gone through some of the same journeys. So talk to me about it. 25 years?
25 years ago, about that, yep.
How did it get started?
Well, so I was living in Florida and went to a couple years of college there. I've always been from San Diego, so ended up moving back. And when I moved back, tried to go to state, couldn't register because I was out of state. And my dad had quite a few connections in the real estate business, and he said, "What about real estate?" And I didn't know any different. Kind of shared a similar story with you. 21 years old, walked into an office, and when I look back and reflect, I was lucky enough to walk into an office that offered both real estate and mortgages. As you know, super rare today, but even back then, it was almost like a taboo, you know, so very unheard of. And I think just my blessings, because at 21 years old, you don't know any better, you know, so didn't know anything about real estate. And today, I've never made I've never labeled myself as a real estate agent or a loan officer. I just walked into doing both.
Right.
So
talk to me about that first mentor, that first real estate guide, and how that helped shape your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So to this day, I still remember Deborah Lopez was her name. Just really, really nice, nurturing lady. She had a lot of business. Business was done a lot different than it's done today.
Sure.
As we know, think about 25 years later, just the technology and everything like that. So back then, most appointments were in person. Very little online apps to submit a loan application. Everything was, you'd come in with your stack of papers, your taxes, and everything else.
Handwritten 1003s.
Handwritten 1003s.
Yeah.
You remember that. So we just had she had lines of clients out the door almost every single day. If she was meeting with a client, someone was sitting in the lobby waiting for her.
Right.
So if you could imagine, obviously, the consumer and the client comes first. So she had a bunch of 21-year-old loan officers just waiting for her attention. So hey, we would spend, 8-hour work days, but just to get, maybe a conversation or two. But had a team of like-minded, which became friends. So we had a blast at the office. We waited for her. That one question we waited 8 hours for.
Everybody was hustling and trying to get her attention as she's going 1,000 miles a minute. And then with that start, how did you then continue to grow your career and to the point where, obviously as a broker and owner today, there's a couple steps you got to go through before you get there. So after Deborah, where did you go from there?
Of course. So again, I felt like I was a little bit younger getting into the business, 21 years old. Yeah. As you know, it's a different type of business that you walk in day one, you don't have clients,
Nope.
So you have to learn to establish that trust with clients, perfect, your knowledge in the industry, continue learning. So, a client could trust you with quite possibly the most expensive investment of their life.
Right.
So
and we were 21. We were youngsters at the time. So it's like, yeah. You go ahead and trust me. I know nothing about what I'm talking about.
So it was difficult. So I think my point of that is that I had a lot of time too. So what also leaning back to my father, he suggested at a very young, I was a couple years in the business to go and get my broker's license.
Right.
So I didn't have a whole book of business, had a lot of time to study. So I want to say, a year and a half to 2 years into the business, I got my broker's license just for the sake of, furthering my certification. So after being with this particular company, doing loans and real estate for about 3 years, I felt like I was starting to outgrow that particular company. Hustle was there for sure, but I think I needed a little bit more just polishing up in the career. And I stumbled across a broker outside of Bankers Hill, and it was a small boutique company called Bankers Hill Properties. The broker was Judy Preston, and she ran a very small team of about 20 agents. They were excellent agents in the metro area, so Mission Hills, Bankers Hill, downtown, North Park, University Heights, so all that kind of central San Diego, which I always just loved that neighborhood or those neighborhoods. And I was selling a property in North Park. I knew nothing about North Park as far as real estate is concerned. It was a multi-unit, and I listed the property. It was for a family friend, and as soon as I listed the property, my phone was blowing up. I had probably 10 to 20 offers within the matter of days, so probably listed the property too low. And here comes Judy Preston with an offer for one of her clients. And I still remember to this day, this is before like DocuSign, you can get electronic signatures or anything like that. As you remember back then, the name of the game was kind of like, how do I meet this listing agent in person and present to them?
How do I get in front and present?
How do I get in front of them? You physically presented an offer in paper. So Judy asked me to come to her office so she could present. I remember getting a piece of paper of her offer, getting my pen, and negotiating right in front of her with what she was offering and what my client would accept. And she probably thought that I was this young, young kid. And she thought that, I should probably teach this kid a little something. So she offered to recruit me. I accepted, and I will tell you that I run Finest City Homes and Loans very similar to my experience over at Bankers Hill Properties.
Mentorship is everything, especially for a young agent, because you do have all that drive and all that hustle, but there's a lot of details, and no offense on the California Department of Real Estate, but those real estate exams, they don't teach you exactly how to do a transaction the way it's done in the real world. So mentorship is everything. You talked about you model your business over at Finest City off of what you learned over there under Judy. What's one specific takeaway that you would say that's exactly why I model my business after?
Yeah, beyond a real estate company, I would have called it like a personal development company as well. She really worked hard on, beyond us being the best real estate agent, it was also like, what are we doing to better ourselves? And it was more than just real estate. And we would have our weekly meetings, and we would just nerd out almost of every part of the real estate transaction. How could we perfect the experience of a buyer looking for their first home or an investor looking for an investment property. That was another thing. She introduced me to developments. Back then, very popular was condo conversions. I don't know if you remember. You'd buy a fourplex or an eightplex, and then you would split the lots and you would convert them into condos. So we did quite a bit of that. We did like ground up developments, and at a young age, I started investing in properties, taking some risks. I started flipping properties, got lucky with some of them, and I was reinvesting them into some developments that she had going.
I love that infill development, especially where you're located. I mean, that Bankers Hill Central area, there's so much opportunity there. Taking away what you learned there, let's talk a little bit about Finest City. Give me some examples of how you're focused on nurturing and growing the development, not just of your company, but your agents and LOs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know firsthand what it is like to get into the real estate business. I know firsthand what it's like to stay relevant for years. As you know, 25 years in the business, we've had a couple of cycles. So there's experiences, and I think the idea of being with a team, being with a brokerage is fast tracking your success. So how could I share my lessons, my values, my losses, my wins with my team members? I realize that all team members don't do business the same, right? Like I could do business very different than you, and we could both be successful. So I try to just listen to their different styles. No matter how big we get, I still consider ourselves a boutique company because it's not only personalized service for our clients, but it's personalized to our team members as well.
After all these years, how many agents and LOs do you have roughly, and what's a sweet spot for a team or a company to be successful?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's still to this day, entrepreneurship, as you know, is really trial and error.
Right.
I don't think that there's a cookie cutter right answer to that. Sure. I can tell you that if we start to lose some of that personalized service, it's almost like a mathematical equation, add another support staff on. Right. So we've got a lot of support for our agents and our lenders. Right now we have about probably 75-ish licensed real estate agents, and some of those are lenders as well. One thing that I've learned is that having a boutique office style with really nice like energy and aesthetics has added to some of the growth, and it's part of a community as well. We started with one office, and as we started to outgrow that office, we started opening branches. And I've learned with the branches that we open, if we make it part of a community, it seems to have a little bit more better energy, So we've had offices at various locations, and we've been on, the third floor of an 11-story building, and kind of difficult to keep that culture around. Yeah. So we've created more modern work style environments where an agent can walk out the door and walk to the local coffee shop or go get lunch or something like that, be part of a community, and also have like you have your office set up here. It's aesthetically pleasing. It's fun to be here.
Right.
They want to hang out with each other. They want to do work at the same time. So that's what we've created.
And I think you said something that's huge, in such a relationship game, creating a culture where people want to be there. But you have something that most teams and brokerages don't have. You have real estate and loans under the legal framework, but under the same roof, basically.
Right.
How has that been a differentiator for you and the agents that work for you?
I'd say it's our secret weapon, absolutely. So back to just a little reflecting on love that company, Bankers Hill, that I was at.
Right.
But one of the reasons why I took the jump from leaving Bankers Hill to opening up my own brokerage is because at Bankers Hill Properties, I could only sell real estate. Right. So I went from doing loans and real estate for about 3 years, then going to Bankers Hill for a couple of years and learning all kinds of different, like almost just great business skills.
Right.
But I couldn't do loans. And I had a bunch of my past clients coming to me for loan advice.
Right.
And I was still giving the loan advice.
Sure.
And oftentimes I was actually collecting some of the documents and then taking that loan file, giving it to a preferred lender. And I felt like I was still answering the questions or almost doing the loan still. So that was when the writing was on the wall to then open up Finest City Homes and Loans to offer both services. And I'll tell you that now with the growth that we've had, we started with a small group of maybe 5, then grew to 10 of us, and we kind of ran like that for a little while and experienced a lot of the growth probably within the last 4 to 5 years.
Sure.
But with that being said, I train on both loans and real estate. It doesn't mean that my agents do both. So still, I would say we still have a traditional model where a lot of my licensed agents still either sell real estate or a lot of the licensed loan officers still do loans. There's only a small handful of us that do both. But what I try to do a really good job is educating on both.
Sure.
So I believe that a real estate agent really should know almost the most intricate part of what they're selling, and that's the financial part.
Absolutely.
So if you're out selling real estate and your client has a question, you don't really want to stop the process and have to call another source to answer that question.
Sure.
I understand if you're the real estate agent and there's a lender involved, you should detour to the lender, but you should have some knowledge on that. So if you're selling something, you have to have the basic knowledge on the financial part of it. So I train on that on a regular basis, and I encourage my real estate agents to learn the loans and vice versa, because I think that makes them better at their job as well.
I'm biased because I grew up in the same fashion where, back in the day, there was a door that separated, loans and sales for the boutique operation that I work for. But an agent that knows even the basic loan officer is, the basic loan officer tools, it's a force multiplier for what they can provide to their client.
Absolutely.
And when they're looking at a deal that could be going sideways, they can know like what avenue is the lender coming from and how they can help, explain that to their clients. So I agree wholeheartedly on that.
I've always told my agents, when they're, just give an example, when they're a listing agent and the lender has some sort of hurdle or a hiccup on the file, and they're explaining to the listing agent, and the listing agent's not understanding what they're saying, it's difficult because then they have to transfer that information to their seller and explain what the situation is. And if you're not confident about that part, it leads for like some issues there. The other thing too is for the ones that do offer both, just think it makes for a possible cleaner, seamless transaction. For example, I've got, a client is calling me and they're excited to purchase a home. If I'm just selling the real estate, they'll call me and I want to buy a home and I want to buy in this area. Conversation typically stops because then I say, as a real estate agent, have you spoken to a lender? And if the answer is no, I haven't, conversation stops. Then, okay, we'll call this preferred lender of mine. Here's the name and phone number. Then you're chasing the preferred lender. Hey, did you talk to the client? You're chasing the client. Did you talk to the preferred lender? And you're looking for information. But if you understand and offer both services, that phone call is handled in 20 minutes. You start asking the qualifying questions, and by the end of that phone call, the client has a clear direction on what they can afford to buy and where they should be looking.
It makes complete sense. And when we talked about strategies that make our agents successful, I think that is a hallmark of Finest City and what sets you guys apart. I want to talk a little bit about some case studies and wins as a designated broker.
Sure.
Okay. People forget sometimes that, the designated broker wears a lot of hats, a relationship counselor, trainer, legal expert when it comes to real estate. And talk to me about, in addition to Finest City, about your experience as a designated broker and just some rules of the road for other, people thinking about putting on that hat.
Yeah. I'd say early on, hire the right people. Hire A players, hire people that are good at stuff that you're not good at. That's definitely been the golden ticket lately for me. As we all know, and we've said it constant times, that culture is everything. It really is everything. And it's difficult to put it in neutral because then you feel your business cruises in neutral. I think that the brokerages that are at an advantage when the owner is also an operator. There's a lot of brokerages where there's, a broker that isn't present. Well, then the business and the culture starts running on something possibly that the owner or the broker doesn't align with. So I try to be present in almost all of our meetings. I'm always present and align with the way that we're training as well. That makes a big difference. I've even heard that feedback that, how present I am as a broker. But I'm there not for an egotistical reason. It's because I want it ran a certain way that I think is the right way for the consumer and for the longevity of my agents and lenders.
It isn't just about consumer, and it isn't just because our license is on the line. It's if we want that culture to grow in a certain way, if we want things done the right way, we do have to be there. We do have to be preaching core values, certain processes. And I think that's a big win. And I know you've been through that. What's it look like when the DRE calls? I mean, as us as designated brokers, what's it look like? We can prep for it, but how does it make you feel? And this gives us an insight for some of the agents out there, like, hey, this is why we are the way we are.
Yeah. Is this an appropriate time to share a negative case story?
We're open. I want people to be able to sit back and go, look, us as designated brokers, as operators, there's a reason we do what we do.
Right. So we were talking a little bit. There was a time that, I've Finest City Homes and Loans has been around for 20 years. During that time, somewhere probably around 2008 to 2010, if you remember the environment during that time, market was crashing, business was declining. A lot of home values went down 30, 40%, seemed like almost within a year or two. At that time, I decided to partner with a side mortgage company separate from Finest City Homes and Loans. For a couple years, I had some ownership in it. A couple of guys came to me and they said they had a great idea for like a refi shop. It was ran specifically off of direct mail. So they would send mail to hundreds of thousands of people within a month period, statewide. And based on this mail going to prospective borrowers, the phones would ring. So it was a new model for me because I've always been by referral.
Yep.
I've always been based off of, treating one client right, then they refer you to someone else, then you do business with them, and so on and so forth. And with longevity in the business, your business would grow. This was very different. It appeared exciting at first. I walked into one of their shops and phones were blowing up. Yeah. So I was asked to be the broker of record. There was a buy-in, and I agreed to it. So it was very exciting at first. I'd say that I chased the checkered flag, the shiny object, because I walked into this office with phones blowing up, and we grew from 10 loan officers to 150 loan officers, which almost seemed like overnight. It's probably in about a 6-month period. We were spending thousands and thousands of dollars on this marketing every month, and now looking back, we were using what seemed to be, and I was naive at the time, but it was a deceptive piece of mail. It looked like, mortgage company, call this phone number, we'll lower your rate. Borrowers were calling in, and then it was up to the person answering the phone to convert them into a refinance. Sure. They didn't necessarily know they were calling for a refinance. And when it kind of became a little bit more evident to me, I realized that this goes against my values. Right. We sent so much mail out. It was during the time that there was foreclosures and things like that. Right. Well, this mail was sent to someone at the DRE, okay, and someone who worked for the DRE. And this person got the mail, and we got a letter in the mail, and it said, look, you're sending out advertising that isn't approved by the DRE, and we received what was called a cease and desist to stop sending the mail. Well, unfortunately, because we were sending so much mail, we already had pieces that were scheduled and sent out. Right. And we were hitting, some prospective borrowers 7 to 8 times at a time. Yeah. So this same person got mail the following week after he got upset. Yikes. So I received a letter from the DRE to stop sending the mail, and then it turned into a fine. And my heart dropped. I've now, fast forward, probably been in the business, 7 to 8 years or so. This was my career for a lifetime. I loved everything about real estate. Sure. So to work so hard for several years, and for one marketing piece to realize that, number one, that it could completely vanish and go away. Right. Number two, there wasn't a plan B. And number C, also letter C, I also didn't realize that we were kind of doing something that wasn't approved by the DRE. Right. So it was new to me, and I was almost naive because this model was brought to me for something that was already kind of in play. Right. So I quickly decided to take a step away from the business. I took a step away from the ownership, and months later, the business closed down. Well, since I was broker of record, you realize how much responsibility you have when you take that role. Right. The brokerage was in my name. The loans were all in my name. Right. And then that's when 2010 happened, and everything crashed. Right. So when the business went out of business, we had creditors that unfortunately were tied to my name. Right. So I dealt with just reflecting on that to probably somewhere around 2011. Now I've been away from that business for about a year. I went back to Finest City Homes and Loans.
You're still cleaning up the messes that come.
Cleaning up the mess. I had so much just letters and everything that was coming after me. We had loans that were great loans, but lenders went out of business, and everyone looked to point fingers at anybody. Yeah. I still can remember how I felt this day, because I received this letter from the DRE regarding the fine. I received a buyback on 5 loans from that company, and my wife and I, or my fiance at the time, pregnant, we were in escrow to close on a property in 1 week, and I received a letter from the DRE and a letter saying that I owed $5 million for 5 buybacks on a loan. So it was probably the one of the most kind of like heart, drop, stomach deal.
People don't realize that. You get into this industry, we are regulated by the Department of Real Estate, and yet they don't show up every day.
No.
But when they do show up, and especially for us as the broker of record, like, they mean business.
They do mean business.
Even just an audit is scary enough as it is. That's why we ask things be done the way it's done. That's what our processes, our procedures, our training is in place for. Because that feeling that you just described, agents are like, oh, why do I gotta do this? Like that feeling, that's exactly what we go through.
You want to rest your head on your pillow and realize that there's no issues because there's a lot to lose.
With just a couple minutes left here, I want to transition and ask you two questions. The first one being like, from your perch, what's the biggest issue and the biggest challenge we're facing in the market today?
Without a doubt, it's affordability and it's knowledge of how to get into the business or how to get into investing in real estate.
Is it something that you're able to, explain and work through when they come to you, or is it the hard part just getting them to walk in the door? Like, what makes it so difficult?
I think there's so many misconceptions out there.
Right.
There's different styles of education out there. I mean, one great thing right now compared to when we first got into the business is the exposure.
Right.
And I think that's a tool where we can use things like social media and other avenues in a positive manner.
Absolutely.
We're able to, a lot of times, if you run your business correctly and market it the right way, by the time your client actually meets with you, they've already learned the information from what you're explaining on social media.
And you have amazing, again, I get along well with a lot of the people that work for you. Social media is amazing, by the way.
That.
So
that was a game changer at our brokerage is we hired a social media person that anybody in the brokerage could use.
It's
a lot
awesome.
of times as an agent or a lender, you're out, stuck trying to find someone. So
last question. And again, and I appreciate all your time. You just such amazing knowledge. If you could go back 30 seconds, we can go back in the time machine. I put you in the DeLorean. You can go back to when you first started, just returning from Miami, baby Eric. What's the one lasting piece of advice you would give to yourself as you launch your career in real estate?
I've got two things, and I'll try to fit it in a minute in the time we have. But I would definitely say that all of the sacrifices, all of the failures, all the losses, we're all worth it.
Yeah.
I knew at a young age that I think about I'm very so many blessings and so appreciative of where I am today. But it's for the 25 years of grinding, of sacrificing that I knew I always wanted a family and I always wanted to be present with my family. And I'm able to do that for the 20-ish years of sacrificing that I did. So I'll catch me on the soccer field on the weekends or something like that. But I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't do the sacrifices. So definitely that. And the second one is read more books. I was a late book reader. I probably didn't read a book cover to cover until about 5 years ago.
Do you have one that you recommend?
The first one I started with was The Daily Stoic.
Sure.
It's a great read because it's 1 page a day. A lot of good lessons from that. Ego is the enemy is also a favorite one. But I've actually, as we said, there's no textbook information on entrepreneurship, but I've been able to run my company based off of some of the books that I've read, and it's been a game changer for me for sure.
I love it. Eric Vaca, designated broker, Finest City Homes and Loan. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jayson.
Thank you for tuning in to the Cashflow Podcast, the podcast where we talk about turning properties into profits. We'll see you next week.